Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today it is my second post-season awards video. On Wednesday I did my Roll Stars. Today I will be going over 5 awards that I will be handing out. It was 6 last year, but I took one of them away just because of the way the season has gone so far. But the 5 awards for this video are Best Mid-Season Edition, Comeback Player of the Year, Coach of the Year, Rookie of the Year, and MVP. So I'll be going over all 5 of these in that order. So yeah, it'll be a little different than the Roll Star one. I'm not going to go through the stats for every single player and every single nominee for the awards. For a lot of them, it just really comes down to intuition. But when I do think there are stats that I need to back things up, I definitely will be giving them to you. So let's jump in and let's get started with the first award, which is the Best Mid-Season Edition. For this award and for all of my awards, there are 5 nominees. 5 nominees for this one are Vestola for the Paris Eternal, Dredro for the Paris Eternal, Kalios for the NYXL, Chongsik for the Vancouver Titans, and Aspire for the Toronto Defiant. There weren't actually a ton of mid-season editions this season compared to seasons past where there were always mid-season editions. These are the 5 that I felt were probably the most impactful for their teams. It was a pretty close one for me between both the Paris Eternal players and Aspire. I think those are the 3 that kind of stood out the most to me, but ultimately I think that the best midseason edition was Vestola, and I think the Vestola had a very great season. It was not a long season for him. Of course, he joined during the June Joust, I believe, and he had a pretty big impact, and I think that he had a very good season as a member of the Eternal team. Came in pretty short notice, a couple days of practice, managed to help the team get a win. And I think that Vestola was one of the best pieces on the Eternal roster. Dredro is also very good, don't get me wrong. But I think Vestola just kind of stepped up in a really big way. And I think that just the situation surrounding his pickup, barely having any time to prepare, it was basically like 48 hours that the Eternal had to find and sign an off-tank, and they got someone who I think had a very good season. I think performed at a really high level throughout the season, so I think Vestola definitely is the best mid-season addition. Let's move on to the next award, though, which is the Comeback Player of the Year. The 5 nominees for this one are Jexe of the Dallas Fuel, Fate of the Shanghai Dragons, Jake of the Houston Outlaws, Gator of the Atlanta Reign, and Late Young of the Chengdu Hunters. I'm very back and forth on this one. A lot of players that I think are very deserving of this award, but I ultimately decided to give this one to Late Young. And the reason why I'm giving this one to Late Young really comes down to a number of factors. I think that Late Young, he was on the bench at the start of the season, right? Not a lot of players start the season on the bench and then are starters and high-impact starters for the rest of the season. But also, there was that report that came out that Late Young was actually going to be released from the team until Elsa retired, and then they decided to keep Late Young instead of trying to find another off-tank. So Late Young essentially, if this report is true, Late Young essentially was minutes away from being out of a job to being a starter on a very, very, very good roster and being a huge part of that roster's success. I would argue that the Chengdu Hunters are better with Late Young than they were with Elsa. I think Late Young is a very good player. I think his play style is more aggressive. It's a little more active than what Elsa was. And I think that Late Young has really stepped up. He was really just like kind of Zarya one-trick for the past few seasons. But we're seeing his diva is very, very good. He's a very well-rounded off-tank. He can play very well on the various heroes, and I think that he supports his team very well. And so for me, you have to give it to Late Young, right? He was the Comeback Player of the Year within this season, not to mention the fact that he went from being a one-trick to a starter and a very, very good starter. So huge respect to Late Young for what he was able to do this season. I 100% think he is more than deserving of the Comeback Player of the Year award, and so he is my Comeback Player of the Year for 2021. Alright, let's move on to the big 3 awards now. These are the awards that the Overwatch League themselves also give out. So let's jump in and let's start with the Coach of the Year award. The 5 nominees for the Coach of the Year for me are Moon of the Shanghai Dragons, the Coach of the Year winner from last season; Rush, Coach of the Dallas Fuel; Get Amazed, Coach of the Paris Eternal; Junkbuck, Coach of the Houston Outlaws; and Rui, Coach of the Chengdu Hunters. This is actually a pretty tough one for me. I think there is a lot of credit that can be given to all of these coaches. I think it's only head coaches that can get nominated. If there are non-head coaches in the nomination, I definitely would have had Hunter on this list. But it seems like it's just head coaches, so I stuck with head coaches. But this is a really tough list, I think. There's a lot of really great coaches here. These are just the 5 that I picked because I felt like they were kind of the best 5 that kind of represented Coach of the Year for this season. But I ultimately am going to give the award to Rush. And I think I may have also given the award to Rush last year. I don't remember exactly. But the reason why I'm giving it to Rush is not because the Dallas Fuel were, one of the best teams in the regular season by record. If it was just, best record in the league, I would have given it to Moon and would have been the end of the day. But what Rush was able to do with a roster that had very clear and obvious holes in their roster. They didn't have a hit scan player. They didn't have a dedicated tracer at the start of the season. They, are they're not very flexible in their main tank position. Fearless isn't really a great Orisa, isn't really a great Wrecking Ball. And we've seen both of those heroes kind of be pretty big in the meta at different points in the season. No hit scan player. Rush was able to craft a team identity and make a team that was able to function at an incredibly high level among the best in the league. Win the melee, come second in the June Joust, qualify and get third at the Summer Showdown, and then lock up number 1 seed in the West, arguably the hardest region this season, without a hit scan player and without really being able to play Orisa and really being able to play Wrecking Ball. Rush was able to make the Dallas Fuel one of, if not the best teams in the Overwatch League. And I think you have to give Rush credit for that. That is not something I feel that you can undersell about Rush. I think Rush is an incredible coach. I think that we have seen his brilliance this season and how he could turn this team into a really competitive team despite the obvious glaring weaknesses. That, to me, is why Rush is Coach of the Year. It isn't the record. It's how he got that record that, for me, stands out and why I have Rush as my Coach of the Year for 2021. Moving on to a Rookie of the Year. This one I think was pretty tough for a lot of the season, but I definitely feel like there is a clear winner at this point in time. The 5 nominees for me are Shy, Pelican, Monk, Piggy, and Flora. I think a lot of people might look at Flora as one of the players maybe who shouldn't be here, but I think Flora had a great season. I think that the only reason why the NYXL had a lot of the success they did was because of Flora's play down the stretch. I think Flora was one of the best DPS players of the season, and I think that he deserves a lot of credit for that. I think that Monk and Piggy in those kind of more backline roles, while Piggy's frontline, Monk in that backline really, really impressed me all season, the way he played, especially his Ana, Piggy Sigma, incredible all season, and Shy really popping off on the hit scan for the entire season. But we all kind of know that the winner of the award for this season is going to be Pelican. Pelican has just been one of the best players this season. He has been unreal in his play, and we've seen the impact that he has had on the team. He's basically been a player that, since like the June Joust, they don't sub out. The Atlanta Reign don't sub Pelican out, right? They keep him in all the time, and that says a lot about him. The Atlanta Reign are a better team with Pelican than they are without Pelican. That much is pretty clear. I think Pelican really has been one of the most impressive DPS players all season. His Pharah is really, really good. His Tracer is really, really good, which is something that I think does not really... that's something I feel like people just kind of forget about, not because it makes no sense, or not because it's like, oh, we're not really watching his Tracer. I just think people don't think about him as a Tracer player. And so we see it and we're like, wow, he's actually pretty good on Tracer. But this is a stat I brought up in the Roll Star video. When you look at the overall team fight win rates on Tracer, Pelican has the best overall team fight win rate on Tracer in the league with 59%. Better than the likes of Fleta and Profit and Leave. Pelican is unreal on the Tracer, a hero that I wouldn't really consider him known for. He is a backbone for a very, very good Atlanta Reign roster, and I think that he is, in my opinion, the clear-cut winner of Rookie of the Year. There were definitely points in time in the year where I thought it was Shy and it was Runaway for Shy, and the beginning of the year everyone's talking about Piggy and even Jongu, but down the stretch of the season, Pelican just kind of took the lead, and then the gap just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so for me, Rookie of the Year definitely goes to Pelican. Let's go to the final award, the big award, the MVP. For this list of 5, I narrowed down from the 10 finalists that the Overwatch League had narrowed it down to, and then I picked 5 from that. I want to say something very, very noticeable. There may be some players on here that you don't think are as much an MVP candidate as somebody else, but there were a couple of rules that I follow pretty strictly. It's not necessarily, something that I will 100% follow, but for the most part, I made sure to narrow down this list of 5 to include players from 5 different teams. So there were 3 Dallas players nominated, 3 Shanghai players nominated. When I did the narrowing down, the first thing I did basically was pick which Shanghai player of those 3 do I think was the most valuable, which Dallas player of those 3 do I think was the most valuable. Eliminated the other 2, and then that left me with 6 players, and then I just had to narrow it down with 1 more cut. So the players that I have as my 5 MVP nominees are Fearless of the Dallas Fuel, Lip of the Shanghai Dragons, Leave of the Chengdu Hunters, Pelican of the Atlanta Reign, and Shu of the LA Gladiators. So no Fleta, no Izayaki, no Hanbin, no Sparkle, and no Profit for my 5. This is a very, very tough award, and at various different points throughout the season, there were definitely people who were leading and then they were kind of falling behind. Fearless, definitely the early favorite for MVP at the start of the season, but definitely his stocks kind of started to slip over time as the meta moved over to Wrecking Ball and Orisa. But I still think that Dallas Fuel are very, very much built on the success that Fearless found throughout the season. And I still think that he is a very strong MVP candidate, and I don't think that just because his stock fell throughout the rest of the season means that he necessarily is no longer the MVP. Lip, I think, is one of the other leading candidates right now. I think that right now it feels like a 2-horse race between Lip and Leave, though I don't think Fearless should ever be out of the conversation. That's just basically what I've seen the discourse around the MVP race. But I think Lip is another player very, very good, very strong. His play was very instrumental in Shanghai's success. Very strong Sombra play, very strong hit scan play from Lip, and his just kind of control of games is a very big part of why he's a candidate. Leave, like I said, another one who's been recently becoming a favorite. Huge, huge part of the Chengdu Hunters' success. He is that Chengdu Hunters roster in many ways, and I think that you have to acknowledge what he has done for that team, and I think that the Chengdu Hunters would not be where they are right now without Leave. Pelican, just talked about him with the Rookie of the Year award, but I think that he definitely deserves to be considered, and he deserves a shout. I think that he has been so good for the Atlanta Reign this season. He has had such high impact that you would be you'd be remiss not to mention how good he has been all season. And my final nominee is Shu, who I think Shu has actually had a pretty sleeper season for most of the season. It wasn't until I think his, absurd performance in the Countdown Cup that people really started to go, oh, Shu has actually been having a really good season. But I've been of the opinion for a few months now that Shu has been the best flex support in the Overwatch League this season. I think he has looked like the best flex support this season. I think he has the highest impact. He might not have the most healing of all flex supports, but he is such a clutch player. He comes in when you need him to come up big. He has the clutch performances all the time. You can rely on Shu in big moments. He has done it consistently throughout the season. He's done it, his entire career. And so for me, Shu is 100% deserving of a spot, and I think that he is not getting enough talk about as an MVP candidate. So I had to pick from one of those 5, and it was tough. It was definitely the toughest one to pick, but I have made my decision. I did submit my vote on the Overwatch League website, and my vote for MVP for the 2021 season is Leave of the Chengdu Hunters. I was not on the Leave train until very, very recently. I would say I was on the Leave train because of the Countdown Cup. I knew Avril had been talking a lot about Leave, and Leave should be considered an MVP candidate. And I was kind of torn between Leave and Lip for a while, but there was really one main thing that I looked at that made me say, oh, no, Leave is the MVP. And to me, the main reason why I picked Leave over Lip was just taking a look at all the stats and just kind of looking at what there was. I started to notice really how impactful Leave had been all season. It's tough sometimes to kind of fully recognize how good a player is. But let me read you some of Leave's stats right now. Leave is first in final blows per 10 in the league. The entire league, he leads the league in final blows per 10. He's 4th in eliminations per 10. He's 3rd most in total final blows. He has the 3rd highest final blow to death ratio. These are really good stats. But to me, the 2 main stats that really stand out to me that are why Leave is MVP are these 2. Leave has the record on the season for the most final blows in a single map. And this season, Leave has managed 3 Fleta deadlifts. 3 maps this season where Leave led the team in eliminations and had more than 50% of the team's final blows. This shows me that Leave is the centerpiece for this Chengdu Hunters roster. This team would not find the same level of success if Leave were not on this roster. There's a lot of discussion around what makes an MVP, right? What does valuable mean? What does the most valuable mean? To me, the most valuable player kind of comes down to 2 different factors, and you have to check off both of these factors to be, in my opinion, the most valuable player. And you have to be the one who does it the best. Number 1 is, do you play in a way that your team plays around? Are you the player that the team invests in, that you are the one who makes the decisions, you're the one who ultimately initiates the fights, that initiates how your team plays, right? Do you do that? Leave 100% does that. And the second factor to me is this player replaceable? Could you put another player in that spot and find the same level of success with the team? Leave 100% is that player. You cannot replace Leave on this Chengdu Hunters roster. If you put anybody else in this position, I don't think you see the same level of success for the Chengdu Hunters. So to me, Leave is far and away the MVP. I think he is definitely the most valuable player in the league. A player like Lip is incredible. And if you ask me who I think the best DPS player from 2021 is, I think Lip and Sparkle 100% are 2 of the top DPS players on the season. But that doesn't mean they're the most valuable. Those are players that are on very good teams that have players around them, right? Sparkle, arguably best DPS player in the league, but they don't play around Sparkle. They play around Fearless. Lip is on such a talented team. Everybody around him is elevating Lip as well, and Lip is able to kind of, I think, find that success because his team is so talented, and there's not really a weak link on that team. Leave is on a good Chengdu Hunters roster. It's not as good as the Shanghai Dragons are, and Leave is the player who just kind of carries that team to new heights that you wouldn't get with any other player. So for me, Leave is my 2021 MVP. But that is all from me for today. This is one of those videos I definitely would love to hear from you. Who is your vote for the MVP for this season? Who do you think should win Rookie of the Year, Coach of the Year? And if you have someone who you think should be considered for comeback Player of the Year or Best Midseason Edition, those are my awards. They're not an Overwatch League awards, so if you have thoughts on that one, I'd love to hear from you as well on those. But I'm going to get out of here. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, consider liking and subscribing for more content like this in the future. And until next time, bye-bye.